At 71, I learned there are two ways a family can erase you. One is by removing your name from the invitation. The other is by keeping your money in the room after they ask you to leave. My only son texted me the night before my grandson's graduation dinner and told me not to come. His wife wanted a cleaner family atmosphere for the photographs. Her father, who had mocked me for 18 years, would be sitting at the head of the table. I had paid for the table, the new kitchen around it, and most of the roof above it. My grandson's cedar graduation desk was half finished in my workshop when the message arrived. I read the text 3 times, set my phone down, and made one quiet decision. For the first time in my life, I stopped building a home for people who treated me like hired help. My name is Walter Hayes. I live outside Franklin, Tennessee, in the white farmhouse my late wife, June, and I bought when the road was still gravel. I spent 43 years building custom cabinets and staircases across Williamson County. That work fed my family, sent my son to college, and taught me to believe almost anything could be repaired with patience. I was wrong about families. Some damage does not need another repair. Sometimes it needs a boundary and an open door in the opposite direction. My son, Evan, was 23 when he called me from Nashville and said his girlfriend was pregnant. Lauren Whitmore was finishing her final year at Vanderbilt. Evan had left college and was trying to build a landscaping business. He expected a lecture. I asked whether he loved Lauren and intended to stay. When he said yes, I told him fear did not make him unprepared, but disappearing would. Lauren's parents reacted differently. Her mother, Celeste, cried because the pregnancy would complicate the wedding she had imagined. Her father, Richard Whitmore, stared at Evan across their marble kitchen island and said, "My daughter was supposed to marry someone with a plan." Evan told me that sentence years later, but I had already felt it in every handshake Richard gave me. Richard owned several high-end furnishing stores and spoke about money as if he controlled it. He called Evan the lawn guy long after the business employed 12 people, and he called me the carpenter as though honest work should embarrass me. Evan and Lauren married 6 months before their son Noah was born. June was still alive then. She adored Lauren and believed people became kinder when they felt safe. She died of ovarian cancer when Noah was 6. After that, I poured most of what I had left into being useful to Evan, Noah, and even Lauren, though her gratitude often sounded surprised. I picked Noah up from school, built him a treehouse, taught him to fish, change a tire, apologize without adding but and sand with the grain. On Wednesdays, he came to my workshop, where we built everything from ugly stools to a walnut box for Lauren. Noah called me Grandpa Walt when he was little, and just Grandpa when he became old enough to think affection needed fewer syllables. I never minded. The boy had June's calm eyes and Evan's habit of holding in too much. Richard and Celeste loved Noah too, but their love came dressed for an audience. They bought expensive gifts and posted photographs about legacy. Richard once told him, "Men in this family should look successful before they feel successful." Noah preferred the leather tool belt I made for him. For 18 years, family gatherings became small ceremonies of rank. Richard sat at the head of every table, even when the table belonged to someone else. Celeste arranged photographs and found polite ways to place me on the end. Lauren repeated her parents' opinions with softer words. Evan learned to laugh before the insults landed. I learned to pass the potatoes and think about June. One Thanksgiving remained sharper than the rest. Noah was 13. Evan and Lauren had hosted both families in a rental house, while theirs was being repaired after a pipe burst. I arrived before sunrise with the turkey, repaired a broken disposal, and assembled extra chairs. When dinner was ready, Celeste handed me her phone and asked me to take the family photograph. She later posted it with the caption, "All our favorite people under one roof." I was 6 feet away holding the camera. Noah found me washing pans and asked why I had not used the timer. At 13, he already understood more than the adults wanted him to. I told him families were complicated. That sentence became my excuse for years. Families are complicated. Lauren was stressed. Evan was trying to keep peace. Richard was insecure. Celeste cared too much about appearances. Each explanation was true enough to keep me from admitting the larger truth. I was welcome when something needed paying, carrying, fixing, or forgiving. I was optional when the photographs were taken. 3 years before Noah's high school graduation, Evan and Lauren bought a beautiful but aging brick house in Brentwood. It had tall windows, a deep front porch, and a backyard large enough for the outdoor kitchen Evan dreamed of. It also had a failing roof, old plumbing, cracked tile, and kitchen cabinets that smelled damp every time it rained. They had stretched themselves thin to buy it. Evan never asked me for help directly. He came to my workshop one Sunday, ran his hand over a piece of maple and said, "Every time I repair one thing, another thing starts leaking." He looked exhausted. Lauren had reduced her work hours at a marketing agency. Noah's college expenses were approaching. Evan's business had lost 2 large contracts after a rainy spring. I knew what he was not asking. More importantly, I knew who he would be forced to ask if I did nothing. Richard had spent years telling him that a contractor's son could never provide the life Lauren deserved. I could not stand the thought of Evan sitting in Richard's office, asking for money and accepting another decade of humiliation with it. So I offered to manage the renovations. I told Evan I had retirement savings that were doing nothing useful in a bank. He resisted for several weeks. Lauren did not. She arrived at my house with magazine clippings, cabinet samples, and a list titled Essential Updates. The list grew from a new roof and safe plumbing into a redesigned kitchen, pantry, built-ins, and covered patio. I should have stopped at what they needed, but I saw Noah doing homework there, and Evan shrinking beside Lauren's expectations. I agreed to all of it. Over 14 months, I paid nearly $88,000. I called in old favors, designed the cabinets myself, and built the pantry shelves in my workshop. I never announced the amount or posted photographs of checks. When Lauren showed the renovation online, she called it our long-awaited family transformation. Richard commented, "Proud of what hard work can create." He knew I was paying. He had visited during construction, stepped over my tools, and asked whether I was still keeping busy in retirement. I looked him in the eye and said, "Very." Evan thanked me privately. Lauren thanked me when something was completed. Richard thanked no one. The final stage was the outdoor kitchen and a set of custom cabinets around the dining room. The remaining payment to the crew was $18,000. It was scheduled for the morning after Noah's graduation dinner. I planned to finish the cedar desk that same week and give it to Noah before he left for college in Knoxville. He had been accepted into the University of Tennessee's architecture program. The desk had a hidden drawer for June's old drafting compass, which I wanted him to have. Lauren turned graduation week into a production at a restored mansion outside Nashville, complete with a photographer, place cards, Richard's business contacts, and a slideshow. When I offered to build a display for Noah's awards, she said the venue would provide something more polished. The Thursday before graduation, I was in my workshop sanding the desk when Evan's text arrived. "Dad, please skip the dinner tomorrow. Lauren thinks it would be easier if we keep it to her side and a few school families. Richard is bringing people from work, and there has already been tension. We don't want anything awkward. I hope you understand." I read the message until the words stopped looking like language. Keep it to her side. My grandson had 2 sides, but only one would be photographed. Richard, who had spent 18 years insulting my son, would raise a glass beneath a roof someone else had paid for. I would stay home because my presence made the man who despised me uncomfortable. On the workbench beside my phone sat a printed invoice for the final $18,000. Under it was the guest list Lauren had emailed me 2 weeks earlier when she wanted help checking spellings. My name had been there then. Now I had been edited out after the place cards were printed. I considered calling Evan, but he had already typed the message, read it, and pressed send. Pressure did not erase his responsibility for closing the door. I replied, "I understand. Congratulations to Noah." Then I called Martin Delgado, the contractor overseeing the final work. Martin had worked beside me for 25 years. I told him to complete anything necessary to keep the house safe, cover exposed surfaces, and then pause the cosmetic work before the final payment was released. He asked whether I was sure. I said yes. I did not tell him to tear anything out. I did not demand materials back. I simply stopped spending money on a home where I was no longer considered family enough to eat dinner. The next morning, Lauren called before 7. She did not say hello. "Walter, Martin says the dining cabinets and patio are on hold." "That's correct. He says the payment was canceled." Paused. "Why would you do that this week? We have people coming to the house Sunday. I thought the celebration was being kept to your side of the family." Silence. Then her voice dropped into the patient tone she used when explaining social rules to children. "The dinner is complicated. Richard is bringing important people, and you know how he gets. Evan was trying to prevent tension. By removing me, by keeping the focus on Noah." I looked at the half-finished desk. I have spent 18 years keeping the focus on Noah. Then you should understand why this is not the time to make a financial statement. I am not making a statement. I am ending an arrangement. Her patience vanished. You cannot leave our house unfinished because your feelings are hurt. The roof is finished. The plumbing is safe. The kitchen works. What remains is a patio and decorative cabinets. Those things were promised. So was my seat. She called me selfish. She said Noah would be embarrassed when guests saw unfinished trim. She said Richard had already told people the renovations were complete. That last sentence explained the panic. It was not about Noah's comfort. It was about the image Richard planned to display. I said, then Richard can pay to finish the image. Lauren hung up. Evan arrived at my farmhouse 2 days later. He looked as though he had not slept. That morning I had watched the ceremony alone online and stood applauding in my kitchen when Noah crossed the stage. A photograph of the screen was the only graduation picture I had. Evan knocked hard enough to rattle the glass. I opened the door and invited him in. He refused coffee. Dad, what are you doing? Sitting in my kitchen. You know what I mean. Then, ask the real question. He paced between the table and sink, listing Lauren's anger, Richard's embarrassment, and the guests coming to see an unfinished house. There was always another gathering I was expected to fund but not attend. Evan said, you promised to finish the project, and you told me I was not welcome at my grandson's dinner. That was Lauren's request. Your name was on the message. He looked away. I was trying to keep the peace. Whose peace? Dad, Richard has been unbearable. He said if you came, he would leave. Lauren was crying. Noah was already stressed. I thought you would understand. I do understand. You chose the person most likely to forgive being hurt. Evan's shoulders dropped. That sentence reached him. I continued more quietly. You knew Richard would punish you. You knew Lauren would make the house miserable. You knew I would swallow it because I always have. So I was the easiest person to sacrifice. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. He sat across from me. For the first time, I noticed gray at his temples. My son was 41, but around the Whitmores, he still became the frightened 23-year-old who had been told he lacked a plan. I wanted to comfort him. That instinct had helped create the problem. I paid for that renovation because I never wanted you asking Richard for money, I said. I watched him make you feel small for years. I thought protecting your dignity meant quietly filling every gap. Instead, I made it easier for you to keep accepting the disrespect. Evan stared at the table. How much did you pay? You know. I know pieces. I opened a drawer and placed the folder in front of him. Invoices, receipts, transfers, material costs. $87,640 already paid, $18,000 remaining. Evan turned pages slowly. His face changed when he saw the roof, the stone counters, the plumbing, the custom lumber, and the labor I had discounted or done myself. Lauren told me you were helping with the cabinets, he whispered. I help with the house. He looked sick. Why didn't you tell me? Because gifts should not humiliate the person receiving them. But you let Richard act like he... Evan stopped. Like he what? Like he helped us. I nodded. Richard had told people he connected Evan with contractors and made the renovation possible. I had heard him say it at Thanksgiving and let it pass. I thought silence protected my son. In reality, it protected the lie that kept my son obedient. Evan left the folder on the table and asked whether I would restart the work if he apologized. This is not a fee for an apology, I said. I love you. I love Noah. The money already spent is yours, but I am done financing a place where my dignity is negotiable. He asked what he should tell Lauren. Tell her the truth. Which part? Start with all of it. That afternoon, Lauren posted the graduation photographs. Noah stood in his navy gown between Evan and Lauren. Richard and Celeste stood close behind them. In another photograph, Richard raised a glass while Noah smiled politely. The caption read, "Family is the people who show up for every milestone." I stared at those words for a long time. Then I closed the app. I did not comment. I did not post receipts. I did not tell strangers that the man missing from the photograph had built the graduate's first bed, paid for his braces, repaired his car, and watched the ceremony from a laptop because the people in the picture had asked him to disappear. Public revenge might have felt powerful for an hour. I wanted my life back instead. The Whitmore's promise to solve everything lasted 3 days. Richard said he would cover the payment, blamed delays on his business office, and then stopped returning calls. The patio remained unfinished. while brunch photographs carefully kept the missing trim outside the frame. Evan finally drove to Richard's house and asked directly for the money. Richard became offended. He said he had already done enough for them. When Evan asked what exactly he had done, Richard listed introductions, advice, and the social credibility of being connected to the Whitmore family. Not dollars, not labor, not one roof shingle. Evan began seeing what he had ignored. Richard's newest SUV disappeared, one store closed, and the country club membership had quietly lapsed. Richard had not been supporting anyone. He had been borrowing from the future to maintain the appearance of a man who could. Richard's humiliation was not the goal. Seeing through him would not automatically teach Evan to stand tall. Instead, my son called me late one evening sounding hollow. "Dad, I think everything he told us was a performance." "Probably." "Did you know?" "I suspected." "Why didn't you say anything?" I looked through my kitchen window at the dark workshop. "Because proving Richard was a fraud would not automatically teach you that you were enough. You had to stop believing him." Evan was quiet. Then he asked, "What do I do now?" It was the first question he had asked that was not really about the renovation. "Go home," I said. "Talk to your wife. Stop measuring your family against her father's opinion. Decide what you can afford, what you actually need, and who you want to be when nobody is watching." 2 evenings later, Noah came to my farmhouse. He drove the used Subaru I had helped him buy after he saved half the cost from a summer job. He stood on the porch wearing his graduation hoodie and holding the photograph of me applauding the laptop screen. Evan must have shown it to him. "Why weren't you there?" he asked. I did not protect the adults with another vague answer. "Your father asked me not to attend the dinner. I watched the ceremony online because I wasn't sure whether you knew." Noah's jaw tightened. "Mom said you decided crowds were too much." "That is not true." He closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked older. "Did you stop the renovation because of me?" "No. I stopped because of how the adults treated me. You are not responsible for that. Mom says you're punishing the family. Your mother is angry that I changed what I was willing to provide." I took him into the workshop and showed him the cedar desk. The top was smooth, but the drawers had not been installed. Noah ran his hand across the grain. "You were making this for graduation." "I still am." "Even after the dinner?" "My boundary with your parents does not cancel my love for you." His face crumpled for 1 second before he controlled it. "Grandpa, I asked where your place card was. Mom said there had been a misunderstanding." Grandpa Richard said some people don't fit every kind of event. I set down the screwdriver in my hand. "What did you say?" "I said I wasn't taking pictures until someone told me the truth. Dad told me to let it go because everyone had worked hard on the dinner." Noah stared at the floor. "Then I did. I'm sorry. You were graduating. The adults should have protected your day without asking you to participate in a lie." He looked toward the shelves where photographs of him at different ages stood between jars of screws. "I never thought you didn't fit." That sentence did more than any apology from his parents could have done. I pulled him into a hug, and for a moment he was 6 again, crying because a fish had swallowed the hook too deeply. Then he stepped back and wiped his face with his sleeve. "Can I help finish the desk?" We worked until almost midnight. I showed him the hidden drawer and gave him June's drafting compass. He held it carefully, reading the initials she had scratched into the brass when she was young. "Grandma would be mad," he said. "About the dinner?" "About all of it." I smiled. "Your grandmother believed kindness could fix anyone. She also threw a pie at Uncle Dean when he insulted you. That was different." "How?" "It was a very small pie." Noah laughed, and the room became lighter. Before he left, I gave him copies of the renovation totals because he had asked why everyone kept arguing about money. I told him not to use them as weapons. "Truth doesn't need to be thrown," I said. "Set it down and let people decide whether they can look at it." He nodded. The next morning, Lauren called. Her voice was quieter than usual. "Noah showed me the invoices." I assumed he might. I didn't know the total. Evan did not either. "You should have told us." Would knowing have changed whether I was invited? She did not answer. Then she said Richard had convinced her that my help came with an unspoken need for control. Every cabinet, every check, every favor was supposedly a way of making Evan dependent on me. "Did I ever tell you where to live?" I asked. "No." "Did I tell you how to raise Noah?" "No." "Did I ask for my name on the house?" "No." "I asked for one chair at my grandson's dinner, Lauren." I did not even ask out loud. I assumed it existed. She began crying. I did not rush to comfort her. Tears can be honest, but they can also become another task handed to the person already hurt. I let my father decide what respect looked like, she said. He told me you would make the dinner uncomfortable because you resented him. I knew that wasn't completely true. I went along with it because disagreeing with him is exhausting. So you made hurting me easier than confronting him. Yes, the directness surprised me. She apologized without explaining further. I thanked her for saying it. She asked whether we could finish the renovation together someday. I told her the project could wait. The house is safe. Live in it unfinished for a while. Maybe that will help everyone remember what matters. She did not like the answer, but she accepted it. The following week, I removed Evan and Lauren from the emergency accounts I had maintained for them and stopped quietly covering their annual property tax shortage. I did not demand old money back or threaten their home. I simply ended the pattern. The remaining $18,000 went into Noah's college account. I sent him a handwritten note. A finished patio can wait. Your future should not. When Evan learned, he called and said, "You didn't have to do that." I know. After how we treated you, why would you? Because loving Noah and enabling the adults around him are two different things. Evan came over the following Sunday. He brought sandwiches and turned off his phone before sitting at my kitchen table. He admitted that he had spent his marriage trying to prove Richard wrong while secretly believing every insult. The graduation text had ultimately been his choice. Richard threatened not to attend, and Evan removed me because he believed I was the only person who would still love him afterward. That is the ugliest truth I have ever said out loud, he whispered, but it is the truth. I felt anger, grief, and a strange pride that he had finally stopped hiding behind everyone else. Love is not permission to make someone the safest target, I said. I know. Do you? I'm trying to. We did not hug immediately. Repair should not happen faster than understanding. We ate. We talked about June. Before leaving, Evan asked whether he could come back the next week and help me repair the fence. The fence is fine, I said. Then find something broken. That has been the family motto for years. He laughed sadly. Maybe we can build something that doesn't need fixing. Richard called me once. He said we should meet man to man and stop allowing the younger generation to divide the family. I told him the younger generation had not divided anything. They had inherited a table he spent years arranging. He said I was enjoying his financial problems. No, I replied. I am enjoying no longer paying for the illusion that you are better than my son. He became quiet. I told him I did not need an apology, explanation, or friendship. I need you to stop speaking to Evan as though his worth depends on impressing you. He has believed you long enough. Richard said Evan needed thicker skin. No. He needed a father-in-law with better character. That was the only cruel sentence I allowed myself. And even now, I am not certain it was cruel. Sometimes truth sounds harsh, only because politeness has protected the lie for too long. We ended the call. By August, Evan had installed simple shelves himself, and he and Noah turned the unfinished patio into a smaller stone terrace. Lauren sold designer furniture to finish the pantry. For the first time, their house reflected what they could actually afford, and it felt warmer. Noah left for college with a cedar desk tied carefully in the back of Evan's trailer. We set it up in his dorm apartment, though it barely fit through the doorway. He placed June's compass in the hidden drawer and a photograph of the two of us in the workshop on top. Before we left, he asked a roommate to take a picture of all three generations together. I started to stand at the edge. Noah pulled me into the middle. Not this time, he said. The following Thanksgiving was held at my farmhouse. I did not invite Richard or Celeste. That was not revenge. I was no longer willing to host people who treated contempt as conversation. Evan, Lauren, and Noah came early. Lauren brought flowers and asked where I wanted them instead of rearranging the room herself. Evan smoked the turkey and burned one side. Noah made place cards from scraps of cedar. Mine read, "Grandpa, builder of everything that matters." I told him it was too sentimental. He said I could complain after dessert. Before dinner, Lauren set her phone on a shelf and activated the timer. No one was left behind the camera. We stood together in front of June's old stone fireplace. The photograph was not polished. Evan's shirt was wrinkled. Lauren's eyes were closed. Noah held up 2 fingers behind my head. I was laughing when the timer flashed. Lauren posted it later with no speech about perfect families, legacy, or forgiveness. Her caption said only, thankful for the chance to do better. That was enough. Richard and Celeste eventually sold their large house and moved into a condo. I did not celebrate his fall. A man losing an illusion still loses something, even when the illusion was built from arrogance. What mattered was that Evan stopped using Richard's opinion as a mirror. He expanded his landscaping company carefully, refused a risky loan, and began introducing himself without mentioning the Whitmore name. Lauren returned to full-time work and started therapy. She apologized again several months later, this time not because she wanted anything finished. She said, "I treated your steadiness like a utility. I assumed it would always be there, so I never thought about what it cost you." I told her steadiness could return, but access would be rebuilt slowly. She understood. Evan began coming to the farmhouse on Sundays. He stopped asking me to solve problems before telling me how he planned to solve them himself. To a father who had confused rescue with love, that small difference felt enormous. I learned that helping someone stand is not the same as holding them upright forever, and silence is sometimes the room where disrespect grows comfortable. For 18 years, I believed I was protecting my son by absorbing every insult and paying every gap. I thought love meant making sure he never had to choose between me and his wife's family. But by refusing to require respect, I taught everyone that my place could be removed without consequence. The night Evan texted me, I did not become a different man. I simply stopped abandoning myself to remain useful to others. I never demanded repayment or exposed the Whitmores online. I stopped one unfinished payment, redirected it toward Noah's education, and allowed the adults to experience the cost of their choices. Some people call that revenge. I call it refusing to pay admission to a family that had already asked me to leave. I am 72 now. June's photograph still sits beside my workshop radio. A good man can be generous without becoming invisible, and a boundary is not cruelty simply because someone benefited from its absence. The greatest thing I built was not the Brentwood kitchen, the farmhouse, the treehouse, or even Noah's graduation desk. It was the life I found after I stopped measuring my worth by how much pain I could swallow quietly. My son, Lauren, and I still have work to do. Forgiveness did not return us to the old family, and I would not want it to. We are building something slower and less polished, with visible seams and shared weight. It is not designed for photographs, but it is honest, and honest things last longer. So tell me this. If your own son removed you from your grandson's graduation dinner after you had quietly funded his family's home, would stopping the final payment be a fair boundary, or would you believe a parent should keep giving even after being treated like an outsider?